On today's episode, we're going to talk about the most recent creatine study that's come out that's kind of put the internet in a frenzy here, which is the effect of creatine supplementation on lean body mass with and without resistance training. As always, your host, Zane Spruce, our nutrition and fitness expert, Neal Spruce here, who's had over 30 plus years in fitness industry, supplement industry, nutrition, anything you can name it. He's the guy. He's going to help us dissect this study here, and then we are going to see if it is legit, if it's something you should be mindful of going forward on taking creatine and so forth. All right. So if you want to kind of just tell us what this study was about, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually printed the abstract, so I'll read some of the things from it. And then I went through the whole study to take it apart, to look at it and see what it was, what it was doing. But I think before we even get started with that, I just want everybody to know, you should all know, there's hundreds, maybe thousands of studies that proves creatine supplementation improves lean body mass versus placebo, everything else equal. So there's one study it would not do it. And that's when you're using it properly. Is that a key to what we're going to be looking at? Using it properly for muscle hypertrophy. Okay, which means taking it at certain timing around a workout, taking the right dosage. In our world, we dose everything by weight. They certainly didn't do that in this study here. Not to mention, you've got to have other things involved with it too. They used untrained people in this. Why would you give an untrained person that's going to work out to put on muscle? In other words, their first time they're going to work out, or they haven't worked out in a year or two, you're going to put them on creatine? That would be ridiculous. There's no point in that. You just get your protein right, take your multivitamin minerals, and you get all that done. You're going to grow like crazy, and then you put them on creatine when the progress slows down. That's our world. Yeah. But this is interesting, and I think it's a wake-up call to a lot of people about creatine. So I think that's a good thing about it. We'll kind of close with that. So anyway, this study will never alter anything or ever take down creatine's ability to build lean body mass versus a placebo when everything else is equal. That'll never touch, because there's hundreds and thousands of studies.
What if they're able to keep recreating the study?
Pardon me?
But what if
it'd be impossible, because they would have to recreate 1,000 studies to show it does.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about that? You can't counteract it with one study. However, you can take this apart and find out why they came up with that.
Okay.
Which is what we'll end up
So why
doing.
don't you take us through kind of just
I'll read what they did.
Yeah.
Here's what they studied.
Yeah.
It's what they studied.
Right.
So the only thing this study tells you to do, don't do it that way if you're looking for this outcome.
Okay.
That's all the study does. Anyway, so let's go.
So take us through
So
what
yeah,
they
it goes
kind
like
of
this.
briefly.
This is it. Yeah, it just says creatine monohydrate is considered one of the most effective supplements for enhancing lean body mass during resistance training. Yeah, got that. However, creatine may influence body water content. Yes, which is a good thing, by the way. Intracellular body. That's the thing that they got to remember. It's intracellular water, which means it's inside the muscle. Your water is 70% muscle. So, of course, as the muscle gets bigger, it's going to hold more water. And guess what? We call cell volumizing. It causes the muscle cell to stretch, and it tells the muscle to build more muscle. It tells all of our systems, our mTOR, our AMPK, it tells it all to build more muscle. So you want that. That's the first step you want when it comes to what creatine does. It's a cell volumizer. Okay, so therefore what they did here, they didn't want to confound lean body mass gains with the water gain. Well, you got a real problem if you're saying that, because lean body mass includes water. Duh, because that's fat-free mass. It includes bone, organ, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, this is why I know these scientists know better than that, but it's just that they don't live in the real world. They live in a Petri dish. I live in the real world with up to millions of athletes I've worked with over the years. And of course, you guys too, and all of your friends and all the professional athletes that you're connected to and everything else. So it's like, obviously we know the real world, and we'll get to that. Okay, so they were going to, this is a randomized controlled trial. So it was done very well as far as all that goes, measuring lean body mass. They had a wash-in period where these untrained people would take creatine for a week. They would take it for a week, and they showed that during that first week that they actually gained lean body mass. I would argue most of it was, again, the fluid in the muscle, but that's what it does, and that's what you want it to do. That's why we know it also works for people that don't work out. It can stave off the inevitable. And then it had a period when they combined it with resistance training. So he took 63 people. Now here's the other thing. And again, there are 34 females and 29 males, and they were randomized. So one group took the supplement, and another group took the placebo, and they had a control group too in there as well. So here's the results. After 7-day wash-in period, the supplement group gained significant weight. Okay, 1.79 kilograms or whatever. Actually, like half a kilogram, but plus or minus 1.7. Just forget they gain significant amount of weight. Okay, compared to more than the control group that didn't. Okay, now following that, both groups now, supplement and no supplement, started resistance training, and they both gained equal amount of muscle. So you with me? So that was the startling thing. They didn't expect that, I'm assuming, right? But the dosage was 5 grams of creatine. So that's my first red flag. First thing I want to know is what was the weight of these people. That's the first thing I want to know before I even go anywhere. I don't dose people by, because they write in there, well, people say that the maintenance dose for creatine is between 3 and 5 grams. For what? I mean, for like little small gymnasts? We work with the world's strongest man. So how can a maintenance dose be the same for everybody? World's strongest man like Martins, where he's a 450-pound freak. Do you take the same amount of creatine to load his muscles versus a 90-pound gymnast? 3 to 5 grams. Okay, so, I mean, it's like, anyway, so that's my first thing. I already knew they didn't do it by weight. Okay, so at the end of the day, we find that the people using the creatine didn't gain, and when they combine it with resistance training, didn't gain any more than these novices also that resistance trained. I would have told you that ahead of time anyway, not just because the creatine dose was too low probably, but beside that, is also because these are untrained people. So it's actually going to wash out any benefit creatine would have. But then I dug deeper and then I found that everything is kind of screwy in this thing. And we'll get into that in just a second. So, but here they did come to the right conclusion, sort of. Thereafter, creatine did not enhance body mass growth when combined with resistance training. Now, this is it gained equal with this. So they gained it, but it gained equal. Likely due to short-term effects on lean body mass measurements. Hard to measure anything in 12 weeks unless you're going to do a biopsy.
Yeah.
And that's a little invasive. You got to poke, and get stuff out. Okay. So likely due to the inability to really measure it well with dual X-ray. Because that's not, it's good. It's a good measurement, but it's very difficult to measure any little change like that. And it says, so therefore, a maintenance dose of higher than 5 grams may be necessary to augment lean body mass growth. No shit. Okay, so I mean, why do you even go there? So anyway, so I took it apart, and I think you asked me a couple of questions, early on that, right? How do I really interpret the study?
Yeah, I mean, let's get into now your kind of thought process. I mean, you kind of just chimed in a bit as you're kind of telling us the process of the study, but with everything being said and how they conducted it, like, how do you interpret this study? Yeah, so I'll probably try to put this sequentially for everybody that's listening right now. Okay, so first of all, you need more than 5 grams in humans. That's how I interpret it. If you need more than 5 grams in humans with comparable body weight to the subjects they used. That's the first thing. If your goal is hypertrophy, if your goal is something else, performance, you may not. Because you have to remember, when we talk about hypertrophy and even performance, we load it. We tell everybody to load. And by the way, the loading dose for us isn't the 20 grams for everybody. That gets most people done, 20 grams a day for the first 5 days. Okay, so which is a lot more than 5 grams. That's the loading dose to really saturate the muscles, get the receptors turned on, get it cranked up. And you get to your ergogenic effect sooner. But that we do it by weight, 0.14 grams. So everybody listening, 0.14 grams per pound of body weight is a loading dose. Okay, and I'll break that down for you a little bit later. And then your maintenance dose after that 5 to 7 days of loading is 0.045 grams per pound. Okay, so we've already probably knocked these out. That's why the first thing I want to do is look at that. So the first thing you need to know is this. First of all, you got to load first, number 1. 2, you've got to have the right maintenance dose in there based on body weight. You have to time your dose post-workout. If you're going to do one dose like they did, you definitely got to do it post-workout. And they just said take it with any meal. So the good news is they said take it with a meal because you need to take it with some sort of food that bumps up insulin at the same time if you want to maximize the effects of getting it in there. Now, here's the thing. Although the females didn't gain more than both females, the control group and the
Placebo group and the creatine group, females, didn't, between this time they started working out to the time they finished working out in the last 12 weeks, not the first week of wash-in, they didn't gain much more weight than with the creatine group.
Yeah.
But they gained more, they doubled their total weight gain, muscle gain, lean body mass gain, including the wash-in period. Right there should be your flag. Who's going to weigh less, males or females?
Females.
Females are going to weigh less. So now they're getting closer to a dose that's probably effective in the female. And I looked up, I tried to get the individual weights on people, and I couldn't. I dug into their whole supplemental data. They didn't post individual body weights on people, but they did post a mean body weight. Why would you do that if you're really breaking it? But that's okay. So here it is. The fact that the females doubled their lean body mass gain using the supplement, but that was mostly from the wash-in period, so I get that. But that's all part of it. That's all part of it is a self-volumization, okay? It supports my point about being too low a dose. If we assume females in the study were lighter than the males, and I think we have to assume that, right? Mm-hmm. They did not, like I said, they did not report the individual weight. So our recommended dose, like I said, is 1.4 grams per pound. Loading, it's 0.045. So I'll give you an example of that. I looked up the average weights of these people. It was 160 pounds. But they all do kilograms in studies. They're just like, the metric system, and I get it and all that. But our people that are reading it.
It was done in Wales,
yeah,
right?
So I just break this down for us Americans over here. All right, so anyway. 160 pounds was the average weight of the person. So I'm guessing none of the females were probably 160, maybe 130, men were 180, whatever, it doesn't matter. But 160 was the mean weight. You do that times 0.045, that comes out to 7.2 grams as a maintenance if you're working with us.
Yeah.
So there's their first major mistake. That's 50% higher, okay? All right. But again, if you assume the men weighed more than the women, right? Then you got to, even if not to mention that they just naturally have more lean body mass than women. So even if they're the same weight, a man's going to have more of it being muscle. That's just physiology,
right.
101. Okay, so to give you a note, a 175-pound person needs a minimum of approximately 8 grams to maintain maximum creatine muscle levels after the load. Yeah. The load's important. I don't care what anybody wants to say about that. And their load would be for that 175-pound person, 24.
The load's important in a 12-week study, you would say?
Especially in a 12-week study. I don't think it's that important over a year.
Yeah.
If you're going to use creatine for a year, you can probably use your maintenance dose.
That's what I was
saying. In a 12-week study, it says automatic. I'm glad you pointed that out. Yeah. Because it's way too short to measure anything even. Like I said, these people never worked out before. They would have gained just as much without using creatine.
I mean, the newbie gains, right?
Yeah, newbie gains are crazy. So. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. So 175 person loading dose will be 24.5 grams for the first 5 or 7 days, depending on that. So your take-home message basically here is that your creatine supplementation, proper dose and protocols for hypertrophy. And it's based on body weight, and it was not done properly for the study. And further, again, I didn't see the diet differences in the study, but it's well known that females do eat less creatine in their diet because they eat less red meat, right, and then fish and so forth. So they would get that extra bump from creatine like they did in the study, even though it was during the wash-in period. So anyway, that helps explains a couple of things in certain situations. Remember, and I think you guys want to look at one of my old podcasts that you were leading that one time, that I made the comment that creatine works better for females than it does for males in many instances. And this is a classic example of one of them.
They respond better at least,
right. They're responding better, correct. All right, so anyway, that's it. And that's the basis. That's my take on the study.
Yeah.
What we would do that is different, and why we know creatine works in the hundreds of thousands that do show it works. The problem with this, though, is the media spins it. The media is not going to say, hey, listen, we just found out creatine. There's thousands of studies creatine works for all this stuff. Hey, we just found out creatine works for all this stuff. They're not going to do that. They're going to go all the hoopla around creatine right now, as you know, internet, everybody's flowing. Doctors take it. Right. They recommend it to their patients now. All kinds of really cool stuff, which we'll get to. A great question of yours about, do you think it's overrated or something? But so all of those things factor into this. And so the media goes like this, let's put them down. This morning, right before I went down to the gym to work out, on NBC News, they started showing all these pictures of, these incredibly looking males and females working out on TikTok, and they're talking about how creatine is so great for them, great for like menopause, all these things, right? Mm-hmm. And then newscaster comes on. He goes, "Okay, now we're going to give you the facts about creatine, and we're going to set the record straight about creatine." And I'm looking at this newscaster. I want to kick the TV, and I go, "Oh, you're going to set the record straight? You pencil neck. You know nothing about creatine. What are you going to go interview someone? Are you going to cherry pick someone to say, oh, creatine could do this? I mean, that's what they're going to do because that's news." So anyway, that's the bad part about it. But again, I'm sure that everybody, that uses creatine knows there's something wrong with all that. So anyway, we'll go on with whatever the next question is on this thing.
All right. So, I mean, as far as the study goes, like, is the quality of the study like valid? Like, this valid? Like,
what I liked about it, actually, I think for what they were testing, 12 weeks hypertrophy, untrained people, a low dose. So it's valid to show that that's probably not going to make a difference in an untrained person in 12 weeks. So valid for that. And of course, it was a double-blind, placebo-controlled. They did a good job. I like the wash-in because that tells people a little bit about it, about creatine. It does, again, does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Intracellular water, making the muscle swell a little bit so you can actually tells the body to build more muscle. Okay, so it does everything. So it kind of proved all that. So they did all that good. But here, this is going to blow your mind, though. Me and all my practitioners, we have hundreds of thousands of practitioners around the world.
Right.
And they all, we do everything, of course, by weight. And we don't just go like this. Hey, you want to put on muscle? Here's creatine. Put on muscle. Like your TikTok influencers and shit, all these people that don't know anything about nutrition, sell nutrition to people, nothing about nutrition. These people, we go like this. You got to do this. One, we want you to strength train. Two, we want to make sure that your diet is proper to support the ability for creatine to go to the next level.
Yeah.
So I dug into their diets. The carbohydrates were good. They had the right number there because that's important for insulin and all the other different things. And if you're building muscle, you definitely have carbs. You want a little higher in your protein.
That's an episode
that's an episode that we did already. Yeah, exactly. Guess what the protein was? The average protein intake.
What was that?
For these people. Don't forget, remember, these were 160-pound people. No. Probably 180-pound males and 140-pound, whatever, okay? Right. 75 grams. Yeah. 75 grams. That would be for a 75-pound 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay, because 10-year-olds have more hormones flying around to be able to build stuff with less protein. So, so if you're working with us and you're 175 pounds, we're going to go...
that's the RDA, what they gave them?
Yeah, pretty much the RDA. Yeah, it's pretty much the RDA. It's a little, maybe a hair more. Which is, good for a sedentary person laying on the ground.
Yeah.
And again, not, which is, definition of sedentary, of course, but just like doing nothing, going nowhere, out of puberty, all this kind of stuff. So this whole thing is just, I read that and I go, really? Okay, the recommended protein for hypertrophy by all the scientific experts and me, okay, right? It's been ever since we were bodybuilders in the 70s and 80s, is 1 gram per pound of at least lean body mass or just your body weight if you're lean.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're not going to take a 400-pound obese person and put them on 400 grams of protein.
Right.
Their lean body mass is probably 250, so 250 or so, whatever. So I'm just saying, so we go by that. And so this is about 75 grams too little a day.
Yeah.
So this was comical. Okay, you know what that's like doing, Dane? Therefore, taking creatine without the proper protein for hypertrophy is like putting gas in a car with no engine. Because how are you going to build a muscle without the right amount of amino acids and everything else? Right. If you're measuring hypertrophy, you can improve performance. If they measure performance with this, and of course a little higher dose, we could definitely do that. Right, with 75 grams of protein, it can improve performance.
Yeah.
But when it comes to hypertrophy, you've got to have all those extra amino acids deposited in lean body mass. So comical. And they should be embarrassed allowing these people to have 75 grams of protein. That just wipes out the study right there. Take all the creatine you want without the right amount of protein, forget it. It's just not going to happen. Now, again, most likely that increase in fluid during that part, that's all part of the lean body mass equation. That's how you build it. So it's lovely that the wash-in period showed that increase.
Yeah.
That was really good all the way around on that whole thing. So cell volumizing. Okay. In other words, the study was done well, proving what what the outcome was, because this was wrong, but the study of the RCT, all that was done well. And I love the wash-in idea. And at the end of this, we'll talk about what did this study really do for the creatine community, if you will, the people that really, we want to know more
so,
about
I mean, in your eyes, is this valid, this creatine study, or does it change anything about how you think about creatine, or should it change anything about how you think about creatine?
I think it should for a lot of people. I mean, the creatine supplementation unequivocally improves performance. It's involved. It can be involved in, and we know that that's not even refutable in any way, shape, or form. How it supports cognition, brain health, concussion, and it helps support injury, injury recovery, and helps prevent injury by healing faster. And so those things are all in the mix of what creatine also does, which is why it's so popular all the way around, especially in the cognition side, mood. That when females use it for menopause, is recommended by female doctors. Lots of places try creatine for menopause, see if it can ease some of the symptoms and so forth. But the bigger piece here is this: when it comes to everything else, and that is what the unequivocal thing about performance in creatine is that we improve performance. That's no question. In other words, if you could do 10 reps with 300 pounds on a bench, okay, start creatine, within a couple of weeks, you're going to be able to do 315 15 times. I'm just throwing a number out there. And you can see it's huge difference in creatine performance. Better workouts give your body a better workout, gives your body better adaptation potential. Right. Because you've stimulated parts of your body that's never been stimulated before because you're moving stronger. That gives you the adaptation potential. Now, your post-workout nutrition, when that's all perfect, you now have better adaptation. Add that up over a year.
Yeah.
So the answer to the question is this, without a doubt. If you took, as far as creatine use when it comes to hypertrophy, if you took creatine for a year versus someone that didn't, everything else equal, same body weight, same protein, same thing, same workout, same everything else equal. So it's a twin or whatever. Okay, everything else equal. You took creatine for a year by weight. Okay, the other person did not, and you did everything the same. You're probably going to double, maybe triple the amount of muscle you'll put on versus that person. And that'll be measurable by even DEXA, even by dual X-ray. That'll be measurable for sure because it's compounding itself over the months. Better workouts, better adaptation, better workout, better adaptation, preventing injury, more consistent in the gym, motivation. All these things happen when you're having great workouts. Most importantly, you have great recovery, as long as your nutrition is right on the backside.
Yeah.
If you're not eating enough protein, you're not going to recover. So those are all the issues. So yeah, it's valid for what it did there, and because once you have you realize that you have to have a complete program. It proved that I guess you do need protein, carbohydrates, your micronutrients, and all the other things to make this thing work.
Right. At the end of the day, it's a supplement, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's not the main driver in all this.
Correct. Absolutely.
Nutrition is always going to be your main driver.
Yeah,
so
that's well said. That's it. That's the base of everything that you're doing is going to be your baseline diet, which includes your carbs, all your micronutrients, not just half of them, like people get from their food. You need all your micronutrients. So that includes your vitamins and minerals, everything your body can possibly use to deposit all that stuff, keep your metabolism revved up so that creatine goes to work.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, this isn't, it's a supplement. It's not a steroid, right?
Correct. Correct. It's naturally found in the body.
But the gain you're looking to get from, you're just looking for any sort of physical improvement, right?
Correct.
Not, I'm going to get 50% better or something like that. Like if it boosts you, it boosts you, right? Like if you're an athlete, then even if it only gives you a 1% advantage, if you ever made it to the top of your field, you know how big 1% is. So
it's the difference between first and last price, or first and a no-show.
Yeah.
1 second, half a second, all that. And I think the first guys that used it was that sprinter. First one that really did, I forget what that was, a sprinter that used it for the first one and showed how much different. Christie, maybe? I forget. Anyway, I forget. Yeah. When we figured out how to load it properly. We never knew that. But there was creatine was available when I was an athlete. And we just didn't know. It was just like 1 gram, 2 grams, 3 grams. And we used to think, well, that's a lot of something because you're dealing with micronutrients in milligrams. And so, But then this guy Harris, his name is Roger Harris, famous scientist there, that he's discovered the loading phase. Yeah. And when they discovered that in the 90s, bang. Everybody goes, whoa. And then the maintenance phase was a high dose because we didn't have enough back in the day. We just didn't know it. We didn't know anything about it.
Yeah,
then.
so I mean, it's safe to say, like, now people are kind of out there saying, like, creatine's overrated. Like, do you believe that this does anything for that? Do you think creatine is overrated after this study?
I think it's underrated and underused. You know, again, like we were talking about, creatine unequivocally has positive effects in many different areas of the body. Of course, you know, it's being used for all the things we talked about, even your bones, muscles, cognition, all that. So I think it's underused. I think the aging population, I think everyone over 40 should be on it, like they should be on a multivitamin all the way up. Now, we're not talking about people with health risk now. In other words, if you have kidney problems, you can't even have that much protein.
Yeah.
Because anything with a nitrogen or radical, any of this kind of stuff, you can. So, of course, those people are off.
Yeah.
Kidney, liver problems, and we make sure we always know that with anybody, would never give them. But a healthy person, I mean, there's 30 years of safe use of creatine, and there's no toxicity from it or any of these. It will never make a healthy person go south.
Yeah.
It'll only help keep a healthy person healthy. So we want to make sure I clarify that for all the people that are listening to this. If you've got, you know, kidney issues or anything else, you don't want, there's lots of things you don't want, right? And then, you know, creatine would definitely be one of them. So yeah, I think it's underused. You know, and I always tell people this: if you're going to use it for muscle, you're going to use it for hypertrophy, you're going to use it for cognition or mood, use it for 60 days. If it doesn't do anything for you, stop using it.
Yeah, save your money.
Yeah, unless you're using it to stave off the inevitable, like keep your muscle from going, because you're not going to notice a difference if you're not, you know, working out all the time and all that. But it'll help keep that wash-in period, kind of prove that.
Yeah.
Little vasodilation in there for people that weren't working out. Yeah. So it's, if anything, it's underrated and underused.
To kind of wrap this up, I guess, would be, what do you think the direction of creatine is going? Do you think this study will kind of provoke people to study it more thoroughly, or how big of an impact does this study have?
I think the take-home message from this thing would be, first of all, there's no study that can devalue the use of creatine. There's just too many that show the value of it. That'll never happen. This didn't do that at all. But what this did do, it highlighted dosing properly. We don't even know the right dose for cognition help or brain health, or even the use of, like, you know, they're studying it in some neurodegenerative diseases now, you know, all types of ones. And we don't know what those doses should be. We do know the hypertrophy and performance dose so far that's really works well. Okay, but we should be studying that. What's the right protocol? Is there another protocol that might work? We know the one that does work, you know, across the board for muscle hypertrophy and performance and so forth. But I think that's what it is. This one really, the study brought that out. It brought out the fact that you got to dose by weight. I mean, there's a naivety in the scientific community. There's a naivety in so many other people. Almost everything should be dosed by weight. It doesn't make any sense when you're talking about things like this. Right. There's a certain amount of muscle mass on a human being, and you're going to put it in there. And it's the same thing with protein and all that. Now, protein is they do by, you know.
Yeah, it's like giving the same macronutrients almost to every person. Yeah, you know? It's like,
and it's just and so. And the same thing with vitamins and minerals. I mean, as you know, we do everything by weight on everything that we do when it comes to micronutrients and things like this. And they should start doing that. Now, here's the problem. It's illegal. The FDA doesn't allow you to put your dosing by weight on a label in most incidences, and that's incidences because they're afraid the customer can't do the math properly. So they tell, and I don't disagree with that at all.
No.
So they tell you to put, tell 1 scoop or 2 scoops. You know, but that isn't going to work really very well. I spell it out because, you know, we work with, you know, all these professional athletes and everybody else too. We do everything in a different document we send to them by weight.
Yeah.
And then everything. And that's the accurate way to doing it. And that's how we can maintain, that's how we nail it with longevity and all the other different things by doing things that way. So I think that's what it did. I think it highlighted the fact that we were going to study creatine. Let's start studying it by dosing by weight. Yeah. And that would be the take-home message we should be doing for everybody. And again, we're on cognition, performance and muscle hypertrophy. Stop telling people that maintenance is 3 to 5 grams a day. Stop saying that. Maintenance is 0.045 grams, at least the best maintenance we know of, per pound of body weight. And I've seen some scientific literature. We just started doing that in '93 when creatine first really came out and got commercialized. I think EAS was the first one to commercialize it. I formed our first nutrition company, Apex, and I jumped on that immediately after I retired from bodybuilding. And so we always did it by weight because we did everything by weight. Yep. We were just a little ahead of the scientific community.
So, I mean, where did you, I guess, just to ask, where did you get the 0.045?
We just did it we were just looking at if it's 20 grams of this, and then you're saying a maintenance is 5 grams. Okay, I'm taking that's 5 grams, and they're talking about an average size person, which would be 150 pounds. Surprisingly, it's not 150 pounds anymore, but that's what the World War II average size person was, 150 pounds. So I just took it and moved it from there.
Yeah.
So if you're 175, that's going to be 8 grams. Yeah. I just divided it up. I just did it all, and I did that math. So I came up with those numbers first. They're in literature now.
Oh, okay.
They've been documented, yeah.
All right.
But way after us. We were 20 years ahead of the rest of the scientific community on that one.
So, I mean, I think that kind of wraps up everything we got here for the creatine
And you can do that. You can look at studies and look at the weights of the individuals that used it, and you can draw your conclusions on how you want to escalate it. Mm-hmm. Titrate it up.
I think that's
I think so. I think the most important thing that everybody got out of this is that creatine is very, very valuable in our health cabinet to stave off the inevitable and to improve performance and in anybody that's looking for it. But also, I want to make sure everybody knows there is no reason to use creatine if your goal is hypertrophy and you've never worked out. Don't start with creatine. Get your baseline stuff. Get your micronutrients right. Get your protein right. Your carbs right. Work out for 4 or 5 months. Watch how fast you put on muscle. 2 pounds a week sometimes if you're young, especially, right? As you get older, it's not going to be that easy. But you can do that just doing that. And then when it slows down a little bit, you want to go to the next level, and you go, I want to go to the next level, then you add creatine for those goals. And then the aging population, whether you work out or not, if you're over 40 or 50, then I always suggest that creatine, 1 scoop of creatine, I do it by weight. Sometimes, you get close enough with just a little bit there. So even if you're under the dosage by weight, if you're an older person not looking to enhance exercise-induced results as much as you're just trying to stave off the loss of muscle, then, you can probably do 5 to 8 grams. I make it real clear for everybody here. If you're 175 pounds or more, your maintenance dose is going to be like 8 to 10 grams. If you're less than that, you can get away with 5 to 6 grams. There's your maintenance dose right there. I'll leave
Just do the math, okay? 0.05.
Yeah, if it was 0.45. 0.45, yeah, grams. Yeah. Close enough, yeah. No, or about 0.
Close that. Yeah. Okay. All right. All good. That's going to do it for today. If you want to find out everything about creatine and its benefits, we got a whole episode already out on that. You can go check it out. This was more just covering the study. Yeah. All right. We'll see you in the next one. Don't forget, take your multivitamin. Bye.
Boom.